Sophia Grant stared at the stack of papers covering her kitchen table and felt a frustration she couldn't quite put into words. The bills were already paid, every single one of them. The mortgage statement sat on top. Under it were the property tax notice, the homeowner's insurance bill, 2 utility statements, and an invoice from a company that had repaired the air conditioning unit 3 weeks earlier. A yellow highlighter marked each balance as paid, yet Sophia was moving money again. She clicked through her banking app and transferred another $4,000 from a savings account into her checking account. The transfer wasn't difficult. The money was there. That wasn't the problem. The problem was that she was doing it again. Over the past year, she had watched herself cover more and more household expenses while telling herself it was temporary. Temporary had somehow turned into normal. Sophia leaned back in her chair and rubbed her forehead. At 37 years old, she understood money better than most people ever would. Companies paid her for financial advice. Families trusted her to help them plan their futures. Business owners hired her to find problems before those problems became disasters. Yet lately, she had started feeling uneasy every time she opened her own accounts. Not because she couldn't afford her life, because the numbers no longer matched the story she kept hearing. The front door opened. Jacob walked inside carrying a shopping bag. "Hey, babe." Sophia glanced up. "Hey." Jacob dropped his keys into a bowl near the entrance and loosened his tie. He looked relaxed, comfortable, the way people look after a good day, not the way people usually look when they're worried about money. Jacob walked into the kitchen and placed the shopping bag on the counter. "You would not believe the conversation I had today." Sophia closed her laptop. "Bad meeting?" "Worse." He opened the refrigerator. "Everybody's feeling pressure right now." Sophia listened quietly. Jacob grabbed a bottle of water and shook his head. "The market's a mess. Costs are climbing. Taxes are ridiculous. People act like money grows on trees." Sophia had heard versions of this speech many times. Different details. Same conclusion. Money was tight. Money was disappearing. Money was becoming a problem. Jacob twisted the cap off his bottle. "We're gonna have to be careful for a while." Sophia looked at the paid bills spread across the table. Something about that sentence bothered her. Not enough to start an argument, just enough to stay in her mind. Jacob finally noticed the paperwork. "More bills?" "Just organizing things." He glanced at the documents and nodded. "Good." Then he smiled. "At least one of us enjoys dealing with numbers." Normally that joke would have made Sophia laugh. This time it didn't. Because she wasn't dealing with numbers for fun. She was dealing with numbers because someone had to. Jacob moved around the kitchen while continuing to talk about expenses, investments, and how uncertain things felt lately. Sophia listened with half her attention. Then she noticed something. A flash of silver. Her eyes moved to Jacob's wrist. The watch immediately stood out. It wasn't one she recognized, and Sophia noticed details. It was part of her nature. The metal bracelet looked new. The face was flawless. The craftsmanship looked expensive, very expensive. She had never seen Jacob wear it before. Her eyes stayed on it for another second, then another. Jacob was still talking, still discussing finances, still discussing caution, still discussing how carefully they needed to manage money. Meanwhile, a watch worth several $1,000s sat on his wrist. Sophia frowned. "That's a nice watch." Jacob looked down. For the briefest moment, something changed in his expression. The reaction was tiny. Most people would have missed it. Sophia didn't. His smile disappeared for half a second before returning. "Oh, this?" "Yeah." Jacob lifted his arm casually. "Belongs to a friend." Sophia blinked. "A friend?" "Yeah." "You borrowed it?" "Something like that." The answer arrived quickly. Almost too quickly. Sophia waited for more explanation. None came. Jacob took another drink of water. Conversation over, at least for him. She looked back at the watch, then at Jacob, then back at the watch. The explanation felt strange, not impossible. Just strange. What grown man borrowed a luxury watch from a friend? And why? She considered asking another question. Instead, she let it go. Or, at least she pretended to. The evening continued normally. Dinner, television, a few conversations about work, Nothing dramatic, nothing unusual, nothing that would cause most people to worry. Yet Sophia found herself noticing things she usually ignored. Jacob seemed unusually cheerful. His financial complaints sounded automatic, almost rehearsed. Every concern felt disconnected from his mood. If someone was genuinely struggling, wouldn't they look stressed? Wouldn't they seem worried? Wouldn't they spend less? By 10 o'clock, they were getting ready for bed. Jacob brushed his teeth, checked his phone, set an alarm. The routine never changed. By 11, he was asleep. Sophia wasn't. She lay on her back, staring at the ceiling above their bed. The room was dark, except for the faint glow of a digital clock. Beside her, Jacob slept peacefully. His breathing remained steady, calm, untroubled. Sophia turned her head and looked at him. Then she looked away again. She tried thinking about work, about an upcoming client meeting, about a family cookout scheduled for the weekend, about anything except the feeling sitting in her chest. But the feeling refused to leave. It wasn't fear. It wasn't anger. It wasn't jealousy. It was uncertainty, the kind that starts small, the kind people often ignore, the kind that quietly asks uncomfortable questions. Why was a millionaire always talking about being short on money? Why was she carrying more of their household expenses every month? Why did a borrowed watch feel like a bigger deal than it should? Why couldn't she shake the feeling that something wasn't making sense? Sophia closed her eyes, then opened them again. Sleep wasn't coming. The longer she lay there, the more one thought kept returning. A thought she didn't want. A thought she felt guilty for even having. Because 4 years earlier, she had married Jacob believing she knew exactly who he was. Tonight, for the first time since their wedding day, she wasn't completely sure. And somewhere between midnight and morning, staring into the darkness while her husband slept beside her, Sophia asked herself a question she never imagined asking. Do I actually know my husband? Welcome to Mr. Gerald Family. To every single person listening right now, thank you for being here. This channel is growing because of people like you who truly love emotional, unforgettable storytelling. Please support the channel by subscribing. Sophia Grant was not the kind of woman who expected life to hand her anything. She grew up in Atlanta, surrounded by people who believed hard work mattered. Nobody in her family talked about getting rich overnight. They talked about showing up, paying bills, keeping promises, helping family when family needed help. Those values stayed with Sophia long after she became successful. By 37, she had built a career many people respected. She worked as a financial expert. Companies hired her to solve problems. Families trusted her with important decisions. She earned good money, owned investments, made careful choices. Most people who knew Sophia described her the same way: reliable, focused, responsible. Her cousin Denise often joked that Sophia probably balanced her grocery budget better than most businesses balance their books. Sophia would laugh. The truth was simple. She liked knowing where things stood. She liked certainty. That made her feel secure. For years, her life followed a predictable routine: work, family, church events, friends, weekend gatherings. The routine wasn't exciting, but it was stable. Sophia appreciated stability. Then she met Jacob Hills. The introduction happened through mutual friends at a business networking event. Sophia wasn't looking for a relationship. She attended because a colleague invited her. Jacob happened to be there. Their first conversation lasted less than 10 minutes. Nothing dramatic happened. No instant sparks. No grand moment. Just two adults talking. Jacob asked thoughtful questions. He listened carefully. Most importantly, he didn't seem intimidated by Sophia's success. That stood out. Many men spent the evening trying to impress people. Jacob seemed comfortable simply having a conversation. A few days later, he called. They met for coffee, then dinner, then another dinner. The relationship developed naturally. Sophia found herself looking forward to hearing from him. Jacob seemed mature, calm, confident. He talked about business without bragging. He spoke about future goals without sounding unrealistic. When Sophia discussed work, he appeared genuinely interested. One evening they were walking through a neighborhood park after dinner. Jacob glanced at her and smiled. "You know what I like about you?" Sophia laughed. That sounds dangerous. I'm serious. Okay. You don't need anybody to rescue you. Sophia smiled. I've never wanted that. I know, Jacob nodded. That's what makes you different. At the time, those words felt sincere. They made Sophia feel understood. The relationship continued growing. Months turned into years. Their families met. Friends approved. Nobody saw warning signs. Nobody pulled Sophia aside with concerns. In fact, most people believed she had found exactly the right partner. Jacob knew how to make people comfortable. He remembered birthdays, asked about relatives, helped carry chairs after family gatherings, called older family members sir and ma'am. People appreciated those things. Denise especially liked him. One afternoon after a family barbecue, she sat beside Sophia. I think this one might stick. Sophia laughed. What does that mean? It means he actually shows up. That's your standard? You'd be surprised. Sophia couldn't argue with that. Jacob did show up. Birthdays, family events, holiday dinners. He always seemed present, reliable, interested, the kind of man people expected to become a good husband. 2 years after meeting, Jacob proposed. Nothing extravagant, no audience, no social media moment. Just the two of them sharing dinner at a restaurant they visited often. The proposal felt natural, like the next step in a life already moving forward. Sophia said yes, without hesitation. She believed she knew exactly who Jacob was. A few months later, they married. The wedding reflected their personalities. Beautiful but practical, elegant without excess. Family members filled the venue. Friends traveled in from different cities. Denise cried during the ceremony. Several relatives joked that Sophia finally stopped working long enough to get married. Everyone laughed, including Sophia. As she stood beside Jacob exchanging vows, she felt grateful. Not because she thought marriage would solve problems, because she believed she had found a partner. Someone she could trust, someone she could build with, someone who would carry his share of whatever life placed in front of them. Looking back years later, Sophia would realize something painful. The marriage everyone admired was real. At least for her. The trust was real. The commitment was real. The future she imagined was real. What she didn't know was that she and Jacob were building that marriage from two very different sets of expectations. And it would take years before she discovered just how different those expectations really were. The first year of marriage felt normal. Sophia and Jacob settled into routines. They worked during the week, visited friends on weekends, hosted small dinners at their house, talked about future investments and long-term plans. Nothing seemed unusual. Sophia believed they were building a life together. That belief made the small changes easy to overlook. The first financial issue arrived about 8 months after the wedding. One evening, Jacob came home looking frustrated. He dropped into a kitchen chair and loosened his tie. Bad day? Sophia asked. You could say that. What happened? Jacob rubbed his forehead. A deal I was counting on got delayed. Temporarily? I hope so. Sophia nodded. Business problems happened. She dealt with them every day through her own clients. The conversation ended there. A week later, Jacob asked if she could cover a larger share of the monthly expenses until things settled down. Sophia agreed immediately. That was what spouses did. She didn't think twice about it. A month later, another issue appeared. This time, it involved taxes. According to Jacob, an unexpected payment had affected his cash flow. Again, Sophia stepped in. Again, she viewed it as temporary. Several months later, the air conditioning system stopped working. The repair bill was expensive. Jacob complained about timing. Sophia paid it. She still wasn't worried. Life came with expenses. Nobody escaped them. What she didn't notice was the pattern beginning to form. Every problem seemed to land on her side of the table. Every solution seemed to come from her account. Every explanation ended with Jacob contributing less than expected. The second year of marriage brought more of the same. Property taxes increased. Insurance costs changed. Maintenance bills appeared. Household expenses climbed. Each time, Jacob had a reason. Each reason sounded believable on its own. The problem was how often they happened. One evening, Sophia sat reviewing monthly expenses. She compared current numbers to the previous year. The difference surprised her. Her contribution had grown significantly. Jacob's had gone in the opposite direction. When he walked into the room, she decided to bring it up. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." Sophia turned her laptop toward him. "Have you noticed we're relying more on my income than we used to?" Jacob glanced at the screen. "Only temporarily." "You've said that before." "Because it's true." "When do things improve?" Jacob shrugged. "I'm working on it." The answer sounded reasonable, at least at the time. Sophia closed the laptop. The conversation ended. Months passed. The same answer returned again and again. "I'm working on it." Eventually, Sophia stopped asking, not because she stopped noticing, because she trusted him. Trust has a way of filling gaps where answers should be. Whenever doubts appeared, Sophia reminded herself of the man she married. Jacob was successful. Jacob was intelligent. Jacob was her husband. There had to be a reason. That became her thinking. Meanwhile, the financial burden continued shifting. The mortgage payment came due. Sophia handled it. A utility bill arrived. Sophia handled it. An unexpected household expense appeared. Sophia handled it. At first, she barely noticed. She earned enough money. The payments weren't hurting her. The concern wasn't the amount. The concern was the direction. Everything seemed to move one way, toward her. One Saturday morning, Denise stopped by for coffee. The two women sat at the kitchen table talking about work and family. Eventually, Denise looked around the house. "You two settling in okay?" "Mostly." "Mostly?" Sophia laughed. "Adult life, bills, repairs, the usual." Denise nodded. "Tell me about it." The conversation moved on. Sophia didn't mention the growing imbalance. At that point, she still viewed it as a temporary phase, a challenge they would eventually overcome together. The third year of marriage arrived. Nothing improved. Jacob continued talking about financial pressure. What confused Sophia was how little stress he seemed to carry. Most people facing money problems changed their behavior. They spent less, canceled trips, delayed purchases, made sacrifices. Jacob talked about money constantly, but he never appeared worried. That detail sat quietly in the back of Sophia's mind. One evening, he complained about business expenses for nearly 20 minutes. The next day, he booked a weekend golf trip. The contradiction bothered her, not enough to start a fight, just enough to notice. As months passed, Sophia found herself dipping into savings more often. Nothing dramatic, just small transfers, a few thousand here, a few thousand there, money she never expected to use for routine household expenses. Each transfer came with the same promise. Things would balance out later. Jacob always sounded confident when he said it. "We'll figure it out. We're fine. Things are improving." The future always sounded better than the present. Eventually, Sophia realized something. She could no longer remember the last time Jacob had described his finances positively. There was always a setback, always a complication, always a reason. Yet somehow, life around him remained comfortable. The realization didn't make her suspicious, not yet. It simply made her curious. And curiosity can become dangerous when it starts asking questions people don't expect. By the beginning of their fourth year of marriage, Sophia was paying more attention than before, not because she believed Jacob was lying, because she wanted to understand what kept going wrong. She still loved her husband, still trusted him, still believed they were on the same team. What she didn't know was that a family cookout was approaching, a simple afternoon with relatives, a few conversations, a few questions, and one comment from Denise would push Sophia to examine her marriage in a way she never had before. The family cookout took place on a Saturday afternoon at Denise's house. Like most gatherings in Sophia's family, people started arriving long before the food was ready. Children ran across the yard. Music played from a small speaker near the patio. Relatives carried folding chairs from one side of the yard to the other. The smell of grilled food drifted through the neighborhood. Sophia usually loved these gatherings. They reminded her of where she came from. No matter how successful people became, everyone showed up carrying a dish and helping clean up afterward. That never changed. Sophia spent the afternoon talking with relatives she hadn't seen in months. Work came up. Family news came up. Life came up. The conversations felt easy. At one point, Denise walked over carrying 2 bottles of water. She handed one to Sophia and sat beside her. "You look tired." Sophia laughed. "I always look tired." "No." Denise shook her head. "This is different." "I'm fine." Denise wasn't convinced. She had known Sophia her entire life. She knew when something was bothering her, even when Sophia tried hiding it. "What's going on?" "Nothing." Denise raised an eyebrow. "That answer never means nothing." Sophia smiled. "Things have just been expensive lately." "Everybody's saying that." "I know." Denise waited. Sophia continued. "Jacob's been dealing with a lot of financial issues." "What kind of issues?" "The usual stuff." "Like what?" Sophia started listing them. Business setbacks, tax problems, unexpected expenses, cash flow issues, delayed investments. As she spoke, Denise's expression slowly changed. When Sophia finished, Denise looked confused. "Wait. What? Jacob's supposed to be doing well, right?" "Yes." "Then why are you covering so much?" The question caught Sophia off guard, not because it was rude, because she didn't have a simple answer. She looked away. Denise noticed immediately. "You don't know, do you?" "It's complicated." "Maybe." Denise took a sip of water. "Or maybe it's not." Sophia frowned. "What does that mean?" "I'm just asking questions. About my marriage. I'm asking about money." Sophia remained quiet. Denise wasn't attacking Jacob. She wasn't accusing anyone of anything. She was simply pointing out something Sophia had stopped noticing. The imbalance. After a few seconds, Denise spoke again. "Look, maybe everything is exactly how he says it is." Sophia nodded. "Maybe. But if I were paying most of the bills while my husband kept talking about financial problems, I'd want to understand why." The conversation moved on. Other relatives joined them. Someone brought food. Children started another game in the yard. The moment passed, at least on the surface, but Denise's question followed Sophia home. Why was she carrying so much? That evening, she found herself thinking about it again. Then again the following week, not obsessively, just enough to stay in her mind. A few days later, Sophia returned home after work. She dropped her purse near the front door and headed toward the kitchen. Jacob was already there. He appeared to be in a good mood, better than usual. "How was your day?" Sophia asked. "Pretty good." Jacob smiled. "Actually, really good." He grabbed a drink from the refrigerator. Sophia noticed a shopping bag sitting on the counter. The logo belonged to an expensive store. Before she could ask about it, Jacob started talking about work. A client, a meeting, a project. Sophia listened while setting down her things. Then something caught her attention. His wrist. She looked again. A watch. Not just any watch. An expensive one. The metal gleamed under the kitchen light. The face looked flawless. Sophia had never seen it before. She was certain of that. Jacob owned several watches. She knew every one of them. This wasn't one of them. "Nice watch." Jacob immediately looked down. A quick reaction. Almost automatic. "This?" "Yeah." He lifted his wrist. "Where'd it come from?" Jacob laughed lightly. "Friend of mine." Sophia waited. The explanation felt unfinished. "A friend gave you a watch?" "No." Jacob shook his head. "Just letting me use it." Sophia frowned. "Why?" Jacob shrugged. "No reason." The answer arrived too quickly. The conversation moved on immediately. Jacob started talking about something else. A meeting, a business contact, weekend plans, anything, except the watch. Sophia noticed. The rest of the evening felt normal. Dinner, television, household conversations. Nothing unusual happened. Yet Sophia found herself looking at the watch several more times. The explanation didn't make sense. Not completely. She couldn't explain why it bothered her. Maybe Denise's questions were still stuck in her head. Maybe she was overthinking. Maybe she was tired. Whatever the reason, She couldn't ignore the feeling. Later that night, they went to bed. Jacob fell asleep quickly. Sophia didn't. She stared at the ceiling. The watch kept returning to her thoughts. Not because of the cost, because of the explanation. People usually had reasons for expensive things. The explanation Jacob gave felt careless, like he expected her not to think about it. That bothered her more than the watch itself. For 4 years, she had trusted her husband completely. 4 years. She never checked behind him, never questioned his stories, never doubted his intentions. Tonight felt different. A question had entered her mind, a question she couldn't push away. The watch wasn't proof of anything. She knew that, but it was the first thing she couldn't explain. And once a person notices one crack, they start noticing others. Beside her, Jacob slept peacefully. Sophia looked toward him, then back at the ceiling. For the first time since their wedding day, she found herself wondering whether trust and certainty were the same thing. By morning, she still didn't have an answer. What she did have was a growing feeling that something in her marriage wasn't adding up. And very soon, the numbers would start telling their own story. The week after Sophia noticed the watch, she stopped treating her concerns like random thoughts. She started treating them like a problem that needed answers. That was how she handled every challenge in her professional life. She gathered facts. She reviewed records. She followed evidence. One Tuesday evening, Sophia sat in her home office after dinner. Jacob was downstairs watching television. She opened several financial files on her computer. At first, she wasn't looking for wrongdoing. She simply wanted clarity. If Jacob's financial struggles were real, the numbers should explain them. The first few accounts looked normal: mortgage payments, utilities, insurance, routine expenses, nothing unusual. Then she started comparing records from different months. A pattern appeared. Money was leaving certain accounts regularly. The transfers were not large. Most people would never notice them. A few $100s here, 1,000 there, sometimes less, sometimes more. Individually, they meant nothing. Together, they formed a pattern. Sophia leaned closer to her screen. The transfers happened too consistently. The dates were too organized. The amounts varied just enough to avoid attracting attention. That bothered her. Money rarely moves by accident, especially not repeatedly. She spent another hour reviewing records, then another. The more she looked, the more questions appeared. Many of the transfers were connected to accounts she didn't recognize. The account numbers meant nothing to her. The descriptions were vague, almost intentionally vague. Sophia opened a spreadsheet. She began organizing everything: date, amount, destination, frequency. Within 30 minutes, a clear pattern emerged. The transfers stretched back more than a year. Not weeks, not months, more than a year. She stared at the screen. That discovery changed the situation completely. This wasn't a temporary issue. Whatever was happening had been happening for a long time. The next morning, Sophia decided to test something. During breakfast, she spoke casually. "Have you noticed some unusual transfers lately?" Jacob looked up from his coffee. "What transfers?" "A few recurring transactions." Jacob shrugged. "Probably business-related." "Maybe. You know how many accounts I deal with." The answer came quickly. Too quickly. Jacob returned to reading something on his phone. The discussion ended. Sophia noticed something important. He never asked which transfers she meant. He never looked concerned. He never asked for details. Most people would. Jacob didn't. That stayed with her all day. That evening, she returned to the records. Now she wasn't looking for reassurance. She was looking for explanations. She reviewed 6 months, then 12, then 18. The same pattern continued. Regular transfers, unknown destinations, no obvious purpose, no explanation she could verify. By midnight, Sophia sat back in her chair. She had spent years helping businesses identify financial leaks. This felt exactly like one. The numbers were telling a story. She just couldn't see the ending yet. For the first time, Sophia considered a possibility she had avoided. What if Jacob wasn't struggling financially? What if the money was simply going somewhere she didn't know about? The question unsettled her, not because it proved anything, because it opened a door she didn't want to walk through. Still, she couldn't ignore what she was seeing. Numbers didn't care about feelings. They didn't care about trust. They didn't care about marriage. They only reflected behavior. And the behavior in front of her looked deliberate. Sophia shut down her computer and headed to bed. Jacob was already asleep. She looked at him for a moment. Then she climbed into bed. This time she wasn't thinking about the watch. She was thinking about the transfers. Because, unlike the watch, the transfers left a trail, and trails eventually lead somewhere. Over the next 2 weeks, Sophia continued tracking the transfers. She added new entries to her spreadsheet almost every evening. The pattern never disappeared. It became clearer. The money kept moving. The same accounts kept appearing. The same unanswered questions remained. What frustrated Sophia most was that she still didn't have proof of anything. Only concerns, only inconsistencies, only a growing sense that Jacob wasn't telling her everything. One Saturday afternoon, she met Denise for lunch. The restaurant wasn't busy. They ordered sandwiches and iced tea and settled into a corner booth. Denise immediately noticed Sophia looked distracted. "You've been thinking about something." Sophia smiled. "That obvious?" "Very." Sophia looked down at her glass. Then she decided to tell the truth. Not all of it. Just enough. She explained the transfers, the unusual account activity, the fact that she couldn't connect the money to anything she recognized. Denise listened without interrupting. When Sophia finished, Denise folded her arms. "Let me ask you something." "Okay. If this was one of your clients, what would you think?" The question landed harder than Sophia expected. "That's different." "Why?" "Because this is my husband." Denise nodded. "Exactly." Sophia knew what she meant. Emotion changes judgment. It changes what people notice. It changes what they are willing to accept. Denise took a sip of tea. "I think you've spent a long time trying to prove Jacob right." Sophia frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means every explanation he gives gets the benefit of the doubt." "Because he's my husband." "Yes." Denise leaned forward. "But who's giving you the benefit of the doubt?" Sophia didn't answer. The conversation stayed with her long after lunch ended. That evening she drove home replaying Denise's words. For years, she had protected Jacob from suspicion. She had never considered protecting herself from deception. 3 days later, Sophia called Naomi Brooks. If there was one person she trusted to look at financial records objectively, it was Naomi. The two women had worked together on several projects over the years. Naomi was smart, direct, and difficult to fool. They met at Naomi's office after work. Sophia arrived carrying printed records and spreadsheets. Naomi spent nearly an hour reviewing everything. The longer she looked, the more serious her expression became. Finally, she pushed the documents aside. "I don't like this." Sophia's stomach tightened. "What don't you like?" "The pattern." Naomi pointed at the records. "These transfers aren't random." "You think so too?" "I know so." Sophia sat quietly. Naomi continued. "Random spending looks messy. What does this look like?" "Controlled." That single word bothered Sophia. Controlled, intentional, purposeful. None of those possibilities felt good. Naomi tapped one page. "These payments repeat too often." "You think he's hiding money?" "I'm saying somebody doesn't want these transactions noticed." Sophia looked away. She hated where the conversation was going. Naomi noticed immediately. "You don't want to hear this." "No." "I figured." Sophia laughed weakly. "You're right." Naomi leaned back in her chair. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "How much do you trust Jacob?" Sophia answered immediately. "I trust him." Naomi nodded. "That's not what I asked." Sophia looked confused. Naomi continued. "Do you trust him enough to stop asking questions?" The room became very quiet in Sophia's mind. Not because Naomi had accused Jacob of anything, because the question exposed a problem. For months, Sophia had been avoiding questions she normally would have asked. Not because she lacked intelligence, because she loved her husband. Naomi gathered the papers into a neat stack. "If you want my professional opinion, keep digging." "You really think there's more?" "Yes." Naomi didn't hesitate. That answer alone was unsettling. Sophia respected Naomi too much to dismiss her concerns. Before leaving, Sophia asked one final question. What if we're wrong? Naomi looked directly at her. Then you'll have answers. And if we're right? Naomi's expression hardened. Then you'll be glad you didn't stop looking. Sophia drove home thinking about that statement. By the time she pulled into her driveway, something inside her had shifted. Not completely. She still wanted Jacob to be innocent. She still hoped there was an explanation, but hope was no longer guiding her decisions. Facts were, for the first time since noticing the watch, Sophia stopped asking herself how to protect her marriage. She started asking how to protect herself if the marriage wasn't what she believed it was. And that change would lead her directly to a discovery Jacob never expected her to make. A discovery hidden inside paperwork he assumed she would never see. After meeting with Naomi Brooks, Sophia became more disciplined. She stopped looking at the records as a wife. She started looking at them as a financial professional. Every evening she reviewed transactions. Every weekend she organized documents. Every new transfer went into her spreadsheet. The process wasn't exciting. It was careful, methodical, and eventually it paid off. One Thursday night, Sophia sat in her home office reviewing another stack of records. Jacob was out attending what he called a business dinner. The house was quiet, except for the sound of her keyboard. Most of the documents looked familiar: bank statements, account summaries, payment histories, nothing unusual. Then she found a receipt she didn't recognize. At first glance, it seemed ordinary. A property-related expense, a maintenance payment. The type of document most people would ignore. Sophia almost moved past it. Then she noticed the address. She stopped scrolling, looked again. The address meant nothing to her. She had never seen it before. That immediately got her attention. Sophia knew every property connected to their household. She knew where money was supposed to go. This address wasn't familiar. She opened the document. The expense wasn't large. That wasn't what mattered. What mattered was that it existed. She searched for additional records connected to the same address. Another document appeared. Then another. Then another. The deeper she looked, the more references she found. Her heart began beating faster, not from panic, from realization. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a one-time transaction. This was an ongoing expense. A property was receiving money regularly. A property she knew nothing about. Sophia leaned back in her chair. For several minutes, she reviewed every document again. The answer never changed. The address remained there. The payments remained there. The questions remained there. Then she noticed something else. A signature. Jacob's signature. There was no misunderstanding that. No confusion. No alternative explanation. Jacob was connected to the property. Directly. Sophia stared at the screen. Months of confusion suddenly felt different. Until now, she had been trying to make everything fit together. Now she had proof that something had been hidden from her. Not a feeling, not a suspicion, a fact. She immediately thought back to every conversation about money, every complaint, every emergency, every explanation. The memory of those discussions felt different now, not because she had new answers, because she knew there were missing pieces. The next morning, Jacob sat across from her at breakfast. He looked relaxed, comfortable, exactly as he always did. He drank coffee and checked his phone. Sophia watched him for a moment. A part of her wanted to ask directly, "What property? Why didn't you tell me? Where is the money going?" But she didn't. The moment passed. Jacob left for work a few minutes later. Sophia remained at the table, thinking. For years she had trusted information because it came from her husband. Now she realized something important. Trust wasn't the same thing as evidence. The discovery changed the way she approached everything. No more assumptions, no more excuses, no more filling in blanks for Jacob. If an answer existed, she wanted proof. That afternoon she called Naomi. "I found something." Naomi immediately heard the seriousness in her voice. "What is it?" "A property." "What kind of property?" "I don't know yet." "Jacob's connected to it?" "Yes." Naomi became quiet for a moment. Then she asked the obvious question. Did you know it existed? No. That answer said everything. When the call ended, Sophia sat alone in her office. She looked again at the documents. The hidden transfers suddenly made more sense. At least part of them. Money wasn't simply disappearing. It was going somewhere. The discovery didn't answer every question. It created new ones. How many things had Jacob hidden? How long had this been going on? What else didn't she know? For the first time since their marriage began, Sophia stopped trying to prove Jacob innocent. That chapter of her thinking ended the moment she found the property. From that point forward, she wanted facts. Facts didn't care about feelings. Facts didn't care about marriage vows. Facts didn't care about explanations. Facts either existed or they didn't. And the fact sitting in front of her was simple. Jacob had a connection to a property he never mentioned. A property receiving money she knew nothing about. As evening approached, Sophia closed her laptop. She already understood one thing. The watch had started the questions. The transfers had strengthened them. The property changed everything. Because now she knew with certainty that Jacob was hiding part of his life. What she didn't know yet was how much of that life remained hidden. And very soon, her search for answers would lead her to the one place Jacob protected more carefully than anything else, his office safe. After discovering the hidden property, Sophia started paying attention to things she had ignored for years. One thing stood out immediately. Jacob's office. The room sat at the end of a hallway near the back of the house. Sophia rarely entered it. Not because she wasn't allowed, because she never had a reason to. Jacob always described it as a workspace filled with business records and investment documents. For years, she accepted that explanation. Now she watched more carefully. Within days she noticed a pattern. Jacob guarded that room differently than every other space in the house. He often closed the door. He spent long periods inside, even when he wasn't working remotely. Whenever he walked out carrying documents, he returned them quickly. Nothing stayed visible for long. At first, Sophia thought she might be overanalyzing. Then, she noticed something else. A large safe, hidden behind a framed painting. She had seen the painting for years. She simply never paid attention to what sat behind it. Now she did. The safe wasn't small. It wasn't the type people used for passports and family records. It looked substantial, the type designed to hold things people considered important. One evening, Jacob entered the office, carrying a folder. Sophia watched from the kitchen. 20 minutes later, he emerged empty-handed. The folder remained inside. The next day, he repeated the same behavior. Then again later that week. The safe seemed connected to everything. Documents went in. Documents came out. Nothing stayed outside for long. One Saturday morning, Sophia walked past the office while Jacob was inside. The safe door happened to be open. Only for a second. Jacob immediately moved to block her view. The reaction caught her attention. It happened too quickly to be accidental. He smiled afterward, as if nothing happened. But Sophia noticed. People rarely protect things that aggressively unless those things matter. That evening, she decided to test something. During dinner, she spoke casually. "You still keeping all your business records in that safe?" Jacob looked up. "Most of them. Must be crowded in there." Jacob laughed. "It works. What exactly do you keep in it?" The question seemed harmless. Jacob's answer didn't. "Important stuff." "What kind of important stuff?" "Business documents." The response felt incomplete. Years earlier, Sophia would have accepted it. Now she didn't. Not internally. She simply nodded and continued eating. Over the next several weeks, she watched more closely. Jacob never opened the safe when other people were nearby. He always positioned himself between the keypad and anyone else. Whenever he entered the code, he turned his body. Every single time. That wasn't coincidence. That was habit. A habit built through repetition. One night, Jacob received a phone call. He stepped outside to take it. His office door remained open. Sophia happened to walk by. On his desk sat several folders. The labels were turned away. Before she could get closer, Jacob returned. He immediately closed the office door. Again, the reaction felt automatic. Again, Sophia noticed. The more she observed, the weaker his explanations became. The office wasn't just an office. The safe wasn't just storage. Something inside that room mattered enough for Jacob to protect constantly. And after discovering the hidden property, Sophia no longer believed that was a coincidence. She didn't know what the safe contained, but she knew one thing. The answers she needed were probably sitting behind that steel door. And very soon, she would get the opportunity to find out. The opportunity arrived sooner than Sophia expected. One Monday evening, Jacob came home with news. "I've got a conference in Dallas." "When?" "Wednesday morning." "How long?" 3 days. Sophia nodded. The conversation sounded ordinary. Inside, her attention sharpened immediately. 3 days. For the first time in weeks, Jacob would be away from the house. The next 2 days followed their normal routine. Work, dinner, household conversations, nothing unusual. Then Tuesday night brought something unexpected. Jacob spent nearly an hour in his office. When he finally came out, he looked satisfied, almost relieved. As he walked past the kitchen, Sophia noticed a yellow notepad tucked beneath his arm. Later that evening, after Jacob went upstairs, Sophia entered the office to grab a pen she had left there earlier. The yellow notepad sat on the desk. Across the top of one page was a short number sequence. Nothing else, just numbers. Sophia stared at them for a second, then she looked away. She wasn't interested in guessing. She wasn't interested in assumptions. She simply remembered them. The next morning, Jacob left for Dallas. He kissed her goodbye, loaded his suitcase into the car, and drove away. By lunchtime, he was gone. Sophia spent the day working. She tried focusing on clients, reports, meetings, emails. Her attention kept returning to the same place, the safe. By evening, she had made a decision. Not out of anger, not out of revenge. She needed answers. At 7 o'clock, she walked into Jacob's office. The room looked exactly as it always had. Desk, bookshelves, file cabinets, the painting covering the safe. Everything appeared ordinary. Sophia removed the painting. The safe sat in front of her. For a moment she simply looked at it. 4 years of marriage stood on one side. The truth stood on the other. Then she entered the numbers she remembered from the notepad. A click sounded. Sophia froze. The safe had opened. For several seconds, she just stared. Then she slowly pulled the door open. Inside were folders, several stacks of documents, account records, property files, financial statements. Nothing dramatic at first glance. Then she started reading. The first folder contained bank accounts she had never seen before. Account balances filled multiple pages. The numbers were substantial, far larger than Jacob had ever admitted. Sophia turned another page, then another. Every document told the same story. Jacob wasn't struggling financially, not even close. He had access to far more money than he claimed. She opened another folder. Property records. Not one property, several, different addresses, different ownership structures, different documents. The hidden property she discovered wasn't the only one. It wasn't even close. Sophia sat down. Her pulse raced. For years, Jacob complained about expenses. For years, he allowed her to cover more and more household costs. Meanwhile, these documents showed assets he never mentioned. She opened a third folder. The contents made her jaw tighten. Luxury purchases, designer stores, jewelry, travel expenses, hotel bookings, high-end purchases stretching back months, then years. The amounts were staggering. Thousands of dollars. Again and again. Sophia stared at the records. Every excuse Jacob had given her started replaying in her mind. The delayed investments, the business setbacks, the tax problems, the cash flow issues, the emergency expenses. The explanations suddenly looked very different, because the records told another story. A man claiming financial pressure does not spend like this. A man struggling does not hide accounts like this. A man worried about money does not buy luxury items while his wife pays the mortgage. Sophia continued reading. Each folder made things worse. Hidden transfers, hidden assets, hidden spending. Every answer she found created another betrayal. Hours passed. The house grew dark. She barely noticed. The deeper she looked, the clearer the truth became. Jacob had built an entire financial life she knew nothing about, not by accident, not through forgetfulness, deliberately, carefully, repeatedly. The safe contained years of deception, yet the worst discovery had not appeared yet. Near the bottom sat a folder unlike the others. Its label immediately caught her attention. The title was simple: Personal Strategy. Sophia stared at it. Every instinct told her that folder mattered, more than the accounts, more than the properties, more than the luxury spending. Slowly, she reached for it. What she found inside would change the way she saw her marriage forever. Sophia pulled the folder from the safe and placed it on the desk. Everything she had discovered so far was painful. The hidden money, the secret accounts, the undisclosed properties. But she still believed the answers were financial. She was wrong. The first few pages contained notes, detailed notes, organized notes, plans, timelines, financial projections. The deeper she read, the colder she felt. Jacob hadn't been reacting to circumstances. He had been preparing for them. Every page revealed a man thinking several steps ahead, a man protecting himself, a man planning a future Sophia knew nothing about. Then she found divorce documents, not completed, not filed, prepared, ready, waiting. Sophia stared at them. Her eyes moved back to the date. Then she checked again. The documents had been prepared months earlier, months, long before she questioned the watch, long before she discovered the transfers, long before she found the hidden property. Jacob had been preparing for divorce while sitting across from her at dinner, while accepting her financial support, while allowing her to pay bill after bill. The realization hit harder than anything she had seen all night. Because money could be replaced, trust couldn't. Sophia kept reading. The folder contained financial strategies connected to the divorce plans, asset protection plans, account distributions, property arrangements, carefully calculated projections. Every page pointed toward the same conclusion. Jacob intended to leave, not someday, eventually, strategically. He wasn't building a future with her. He was building an exit from her. Sophia felt sick. For years, she believed they were working toward the same goals. These documents proved otherwise. Jacob had been working toward his goals. She had simply been helping fund them. She turned another page, then another. The next discovery hit even harder. Photographs, travel confirmations, hotel reservations, personal messages. At first, Sophia didn't understand what she was looking at. Then the names appeared. Claire Whitfield. Several pages connected directly to Claire. Trips, gifts, expenses, records. The pattern was obvious. This wasn't business. This wasn't friendship. This was a relationship. Sophia kept reading. The folder wasn't finished. More records appeared. More messages. More expenses. Then another name. Brianna Mercer. The same pattern appeared again. Travel expenses, purchases, reservations, financial support. Jacob wasn't maintaining one secret relationship. He was maintaining two. For several moments, Sophia simply stared at the documents. The room felt smaller. The air felt heavier. Everything she had discovered earlier suddenly made sense. The transfers, the hidden spending, the unexplained expenses, the luxury purchases, the missing money. It wasn't disappearing. Jacob was spending it elsewhere. While telling Sophia money was tight, while watching her move money from savings, while allowing her to carry responsibilities that should have belonged to both of them. Sophia thought back to dozens of conversations. Every complaint about finances, every warning about spending, every discussion about being careful. Now she understood what was really happening. Jacob wasn't protecting their future. He was protecting his own, and Sophia was paying the price. She opened another section of the folder. More planning documents, more divorce preparation, more calculations. Everything pointed toward one goal: leave the marriage while keeping as much money as possible. The realization hurt more than discovering the affairs. The affairs were betrayal. The planning was intention. The planning meant Jacob had been thinking about this for a long time. He had smiled across the dinner table, attended family gatherings, accepted support from her relatives, allowed Denise to welcome him into the family, all while quietly preparing an entirely different future. That truth was impossible to ignore. Sophia looked around the office. For years she believed this room contained business records. For years she believed the safe protected investments and private documents. Now she knew the truth. The safe contained the real version of Jacob, not the husband she thought she married. The husband he actually was. The man who complained about money while hiding wealth. The man who accepted help while financing other relationships. The man who planned a divorce while allowing his wife to pay for the life he claimed they were building together. Near the back of the folder sat one final document. Sophia pulled it out slowly. It was another divorce filing package. Organized, prepared, ready for submission. Jacob had already done most of the work. He was simply waiting for the moment he believed would benefit him most. Sophia looked at the papers for several seconds. Then she carefully returned everything to its proper place. Every document, every folder, every record, exactly where she found it. By the time she closed the safe, her marriage looked completely different. Hours earlier, she had entered the office looking for answers. Now, she had them. The hidden property was real. The hidden money was real. The affairs were real. The divorce strategy was real. Most importantly, Jacob's deception was real. Sophia replaced the painting and walked out of the office. She wasn't thinking about confrontation. She wasn't thinking about revenge. She was thinking about evidence. Because for the first time since this journey began, she finally understood the full picture. And she knew something Jacob did not. The safest place in his life had just become the most dangerous place for him. When Jacob returned from Dallas, he walked into the house expecting everything to be exactly as he left it. As far as he knew, it was. Sophia greeted him normally. They had dinner together, talked about work, discussed routine things. Nothing in her behavior suggested she knew the truth. That was exactly how she wanted it. Jacob believed his secrets were protected. Sophia intended to keep it that way for now. The morning after his return, she went to work as usual. By lunchtime, she had already made a decision. She needed legal advice. Not later. Immediately. The same afternoon, she contacted Holden Reed. She chose him because of his reputation. He handled complex financial cases. He understood hidden assets. Most importantly, he understood evidence. 3 days later, Sophia sat inside Holden's office. She arrived carrying organized folders, copies of financial records, copies of transfer histories, copies of documents from the safe. Everything was labeled. Everything was chronological. Everything was backed up. Holden spent nearly 2 hours reviewing the material. The deeper he went, the more serious he became. Finally, he closed the last folder. "This is extensive." Sophia nodded. "I thought so." Holden leaned back. "This isn't someone making mistakes." "What is it?" "This is planning." The answer matched what Sophia already suspected. Nothing she found looked accidental. The accounts were organized. The properties were organized. The divorce plans were organized. Everything pointed toward preparation. Holden opened another folder. "Did he know you found this?" "No." "Good." That answer came immediately. Sophia understood why. The longer Jacob remained unaware, the more evidence remained available. Holden gave her simple instructions. Document everything. Copy everything. Save everything. Tell nobody, except the people helping her. Sophia followed those instructions carefully. Over the following weeks, she became methodical. Every new document was stored. Every transfer was recorded. Every account was tracked. Every inconsistency was preserved. Meanwhile, life inside the house continued normally, at least from Jacob's perspective. He still complained about money. He still discussed business problems. He still acted as though Sophia knew nothing. One evening, he sat across from her discussing expenses. Sophia listened without reacting. Months earlier, she would have believed every word. Now she heard something different. Not information, a performance. Jacob never noticed the change. His confidence remained intact. That confidence became one of Sophia's greatest advantages. Because people who believe they are safe often stop being careful. The more comfortable Jacob became, the more information he revealed. Small details, small habits, small inconsistencies. Sophia documented them all. She no longer argued, no longer questioned, no longer challenged him. She simply collected facts. Holden remained in regular contact. Each new piece of information strengthened the case. Each new document filled another gap. The evidence was becoming impossible to ignore. Yet Jacob continued living as if he controlled everything. That misunderstanding would become very important. Because while Jacob believed he was protecting himself, Sophia was quietly building a complete record of what he had done. And with every passing week, that record became stronger. As Holden Reed's team continued reviewing the evidence, more connections appeared. The hidden transfers led to specific purchases. The purchases led to travel records. The travel records led directly to Claire Whitfield and Brianna Mercer. By this point, Sophia was no longer surprised. The safe had already revealed enough. What surprised her was what happened next. Neither woman knew the full truth. Holden's team began verifying information connected to the financial records. During that process, Claire learned details Jacob had never shared with her. According to Jacob, his marriage was already falling apart. According to Jacob, divorce was only a matter of time. According to Jacob, he was practically living a separate life. The evidence showed something very different. Jacob was still living with Sophia, still sharing a home, still allowing Sophia to support household expenses, still presenting himself publicly as a married man. When Claire saw the documentation, her reaction changed immediately. The story Jacob gave her no longer matched reality. The dates didn't match. The records didn't match. The facts didn't match. Everything pointed toward deception. Claire wasn't protecting Jacob anymore. She felt deceived herself. That discovery became important. Because she possessed information Jacob never expected anyone else to see. Travel arrangements, conversations, financial gifts, purchases, records that helped confirm the timeline Sophia was already building. The evidence became stronger, not weaker. A similar situation developed with Brianna Mercer. Like Claire, Brianna had received a carefully edited version of Jacob's life. A version designed to make him look available. A version designed to gain sympathy. A version designed to hide the truth. Once Brianna learned the full story, her view of Jacob changed quickly. She discovered he had told different stories to different people. Promises made in one place contradicted promises made somewhere else. The same pattern appeared again and again. Jacob adjusted the truth depending on who was listening. For years, that strategy worked. Now, it was collapsing. Information that had once been separated was finally coming together. Sophia listened as Holden explained the developments. She wasn't happy. She wasn't celebrating. She was exhausted. The more she learned, the more she realized how much effort Jacob invested in maintaining separate versions of his life. A husband in one place, a businessman in another, a future divorcee somewhere else. The image changed depending on the audience. The facts remained the same. One afternoon, Sophia met with Holden again. Several folders sat on the conference table. Holden opened one of them. The timeline is getting clearer. Sophia looked down at the documents. The records stretched back years, not months, years. That realization hit hard. This wasn't a recent mistake. This wasn't a short period of bad decisions. The deception had been part of Jacob's life for a long time. Holden turned another page. The good news is consistency. What do you mean? The evidence supports itself. That mattered. Every document connected to another document. Every payment connected to another record. Every explanation became easier to verify. The truth didn't require guessing anymore. It was documented. Meanwhile, Jacob remained completely unaware. He still moved through daily life with confidence, still spoke about future plans, still acted like a man managing every detail. Sophia watched him carefully. Sometimes she wondered how long he had been living this way, how long he had been telling different stories to different people, how long he expected it to continue. Those questions no longer controlled her emotions. Facts did. That was the difference. Weeks earlier, Sophia was searching for answers. Now she had answers. What she needed next was accountability, and accountability was getting closer. Every new document strengthened the case. Every new confirmation closed another gap. Every new piece of evidence pushed the situation toward an outcome Jacob never expected. The man who spent years controlling information was losing control of it, and he still didn't realize it. The most dangerous part for Jacob wasn't what Sophia knew. It was what he believed she didn't know. Because, while he continued planning his next move, Sophia and Holden already understood the game he was playing. And very soon, Jacob would make the biggest move of all. He would finally put his divorce plan into action. Believing he was about to win, by the beginning of autumn, Jacob seemed happier than he had been in years. The change was impossible to miss. His complaints about money became less frequent. His confidence grew. He spent more time on phone calls, more time outside the house, more time focused on plans he never fully explained. Sophia noticed all of it. She also knew why. Jacob believed the future was moving exactly the way he wanted. He believed his assets were protected. He believed his secrets were still hidden. Most importantly, he believed Sophia remained unaware. Every day, that assumption made him more comfortable. One evening he came home carrying takeout from a restaurant they both liked. He seemed unusually cheerful. "Good day?" Sophia asked. "Very good day." Jacob smiled as he unpacked the food. "You know, sometimes things finally start falling into place." Sophia looked at him. "That's good." "It is." The conversation ended there, but Sophia understood something Jacob didn't. He wasn't talking about business. He was talking about his plan. The same plan she had already discovered inside the safe. The same plan he believed remained secret. Over the next several weeks, Jacob became even more confident. He attended networking events, met with attorneys, spent hours handling paperwork. None of it was hidden particularly well anymore. He acted like someone approaching a finish line, someone convinced victory was already secured. Meanwhile, Sophia continued working with Holden Reed. The evidence was organized. The accounts were traced. The property records were documented. The spending history was verified. Every important document had been preserved. The case no longer depended on suspicion. It depended on records. One afternoon, Holden reviewed the latest file and nodded. "He thinks he's ahead." Sophia almost smiled. "I know. The problem is he doesn't realize we're looking at the same map." That observation stayed with her, because it was true. Jacob thought he controlled the information. The reality was very different. Weeks later, the moment finally arrived. Sophia came home from work and found Jacob sitting at the dining room table. Several folders sat neatly arranged in front of him. He looked calm, prepared, certain. The sight immediately reminded her of the documents she had found inside the safe. Jacob gestured toward the chair across from him. "Can we talk?" Sophia sat down. "Sure." Jacob folded his hands. "I think it's time we move forward." Sophia already knew where the conversation was going. She simply allowed him to continue. "I've been doing a lot of thinking." He slid a folder toward her. "I've decided to file for divorce." The words landed exactly as he intended. He expected shock. He expected confusion. He expected an emotional reaction. Instead, Sophia looked down at the paperwork, then back at Jacob. "Okay?" The response caught him off guard. Only for a moment, but she saw it. The hesitation, the uncertainty. Jacob quickly recovered. "I think it's the best decision." Sophia opened the folder. The documents looked familiar, very familiar, because she had already seen versions of them inside the safe, months earlier, before Jacob ever brought them to the table, before he ever mentioned divorce, before he ever suspected she knew anything. She slowly turned the pages. Jacob watched carefully, waiting, expecting, looking for signs of panic. He didn't find any. What Jacob didn't understand was that Sophia wasn't reading the documents for the first time. She was reading them for the second. The settlement proposal reflected exactly what she expected. It heavily favored Jacob. Assets were presented selectively. Financial realities were presented selectively. The proposal relied on one critical assumption, that Sophia didn't know the truth. Unfortunately for Jacob, she knew all of it. Every account, every property, every transfer, every relationship. every plan, the entire strategy had already been exposed. Jacob leaned back confidently. "I think this is fair." Sophia looked up. "Do you?" "Yes." He sounded completely certain. The certainty almost amazed her. Even now he believed he controlled the situation. Even now he believed she was operating with limited information. Even now he thought the safe remained unopened. Sophia closed the folder. "I'll have someone review it." "Of course." Jacob nodded. The answer seemed to reassure him. He smiled. The same confident smile she had seen throughout their marriage. The same smile he wore while hiding accounts. The same smile he wore while hiding properties. The same smile he wore while building an exit strategy. That night, Jacob seemed relieved, like a man who had finally completed an important task. Sophia watched quietly. She wasn't angry anymore. Anger had been replaced by clarity. The facts were already documented. The evidence was already secured. The truth was already preserved. Jacob simply didn't know it yet. As he moved around the house that evening, he carried himself like someone who had won, like someone standing at the end of a successful plan. What he couldn't see was how much had changed. Months earlier, he controlled the information. Months earlier, he controlled the narrative. Months earlier, Sophia trusted every explanation. That version of reality no longer existed. Now the evidence spoke for itself. And very soon, Jacob would discover that the plan he spent years building was about to collapse under the weight of his own records. After Jacob filed for divorce, the legal process moved quickly. Meetings were scheduled, financial disclosures were requested, records were exchanged. For the first time, Jacob's private decisions faced public examination. At the beginning, he still appeared confident. He arrived at meetings looking relaxed. He spoke comfortably. He acted like a man expecting a predictable outcome. Sophia noticed it immediately. So did Holden Reed. Jacob believed the evidence available to Sophia was limited. That belief became his biggest weakness. The first major review meeting took place several weeks after the divorce filing. Both sides arrived with attorneys. Financial records were presented. Questions were asked. Documents were reviewed. At first, everything seemed routine. Then Holden introduced the first group of records: hidden transfers, verified account activity, financial histories covering multiple years. The atmosphere changed immediately. Jacob's legal team reviewed the documents carefully. Jacob's expression changed, not dramatically, but enough. The confidence that had followed him for months became less certain. More records followed: account statements, payment histories, property-related expenses, verified financial transactions. Every document connected to another. Every record strengthened the next. The story those records told was impossible to ignore. A man claiming financial hardship had access to substantial assets. A man claiming financial pressure had spent large amounts elsewhere. A man requesting favorable treatment in divorce proceedings had concealed significant information. The facts created problems that explanations could not easily solve. Over the following weeks, additional records entered the case: luxury purchases, travel expenses, gift purchases, private payments, hidden accounts. Every new document added another layer. Sophia watched carefully. She had spent years listening to Jacob explain financial difficulties. Now the records spoke for themselves, and the records told a very different story. One afternoon, Holden reviewed the latest responses from Jacob's side. He looked up from the paperwork. "They're struggling." Sophia knew exactly why. The evidence was too detailed, too organized, too consistent. Every document had supporting records. Every claim had supporting proof. Facts are difficult to argue with when they are documented. As the process continued, Jacob's confidence became harder to maintain. Questions became more direct. Explanations became less effective. Financial disclosures became more complicated. The hidden parts of his life were becoming visible, not through accusations, through records. That made all the difference. Sophia felt something she had not felt in a long time: relief, not because she enjoyed Jacob's situation, because she no longer had to wonder. The truth was finally being examined in full. No guessing, no assumptions, no excuses, just facts. And those facts were leading everyone toward the same conclusion. Jacob had spent years creating an image. Now reality was replacing it, and the process was only beginning. As the legal process continued, one question kept returning. How much did Jacob actually hide? The answer arrived through the very thing he trusted most, his safe. Until that point, the evidence already looked strong. The hidden transfers had been documented, the concealed accounts had been traced, the spending records had been verified, but the documents from the safe changed everything. Those records didn't come from assumptions. They came directly from Jacob's own files, his own organization, his own planning, his own records. That made them extremely difficult to explain away. During one review session, Holden introduced another group of documents: property records, account information, financial projections, the same materials Sophia had discovered inside the safe months earlier. The reaction was immediate. Every page connected to existing evidence. Every page confirmed previous findings. Nothing stood alone. Everything fit together. The hidden property Sophia discovered in Chapter 2 no longer looked like an isolated issue. It became part of a much larger picture. The same thing happened with the financial transfers. The same thing happened with the luxury spending. The same thing happened with the divorce planning. For years, Jacob had treated each secret as a separate piece. The records showed they were all connected. One afternoon, Holden met with Sophia to review another development. Several folders sat open across the table. Holden pointed toward a document. "This one is important." Sophia looked down. She immediately recognized it. One of the planning documents from the safe. The same document Jacob had prepared months before filing for divorce. The same document that revealed he was planning his exit long before Sophia became suspicious. Holden tapped the page. "This shows intent." That word mattered. Intent, not confusion, not mistakes, not misunderstandings. Planning, preparation, purpose. The distinction became increasingly important because Jacob's actions no longer looked accidental. The records revealed a pattern that stretched across years. A pattern involving money, a pattern involving secrecy, a pattern involving decisions that benefited him while placing more responsibility on Sophia. The more documents reviewed, the harder it became to deny. At one point, additional financial records connected directly to expenditures involving Claire Whitfield and Brianna Mercer. Those records matched timelines, matched payments, matched travel expenses. Everything supported everything else. The evidence reinforced itself. That became the biggest problem for Jacob. A single document can be challenged. Hundreds of connected documents become much harder to dispute. Weeks passed. The reviews continued. Each session revealed another contradiction. Each contradiction weakened Jacob's position. The confidence Sophia saw during the divorce filing slowly disappeared. The man who once looked completely certain now looked increasingly uncomfortable. Not because someone was attacking him, because his own records kept speaking. One afternoon, Sophia watched him across a conference table. For the first time since their marriage began, he looked like someone running out of answers. The change was impossible to miss. Years earlier, Jacob believed the safe protected him. He believed it protected his assets, his plans, his future. Instead, it became the strongest witness against him. The irony wasn't lost on Sophia. The place he trusted most became the source of his biggest problem. Every carefully organized folder, every saved document, every detailed plan, all of it eventually pointed back to him. By the time the final reviews approached, one truth had become impossible to ignore. Jacob's biggest mistake wasn't hiding the truth. His biggest mistake was documenting it. Because the records he created to protect himself ultimately exposed everything, and the consequences were finally catching up to him. The legal process eventually ended, not with drama, not with speeches, not with some dramatic moment that changed everything overnight. The real change had already happened months earlier. The day Sophia opened the safe. The day she stopped believing excuses and started believing evidence. Once the legal issues were resolved, Sophia focused on something much more important: her own life. For years, she had been carrying responsibilities that were never meant to belong to one person. financial pressure, emotional pressure, constant worry, constant explanations, constant problems. Many of those problems disappeared the moment she stopped carrying Jacob's choices. The first few months felt strange. The house was quieter. The bills were easier to understand. The accounts finally made sense again. Every dollar had a purpose. Every expense had an explanation. There were no hidden surprises, no missing money, no mysterious transfers, no stories that needed investigating. For the first time in years, Sophia felt like she was back in control of her own life. Her savings began growing again, not because she suddenly earned more money, because less money was leaving. That realization bothered her at first. She couldn't stop thinking about how much she had sacrificed while Jacob secretly protected himself. Then something important happened. She stopped counting what she lost. She started focusing on what remained: her health, her career, her family, her future. Those things still belonged to her, and they mattered more than anything Jacob had taken. Denise noticed the change first. One afternoon she stopped by with lunch. The two women sat at the kitchen table where so many important conversations had happened over the years. Denise smiled. "You look different." Sophia laughed. "Good different or bad different?" "Good." "What changed?" Denise pointed at her. "You're lighter." Sophia understood exactly what she meant. For years, she had carried stress she couldn't fully explain. Now, it was gone. Not completely. Healing takes time. But the burden was no longer sitting on her shoulders. That mattered a lot. As the months passed, Sophia started reconnecting with parts of her life she had neglected. She spent more time with relatives, more time with friends, more time doing things she actually enjoyed. The changes weren't dramatic. They were small. Real life is usually built from small changes: a family dinner, a weekend trip, an afternoon with people who genuinely care about you. Those moments slowly added up, the same way the problems once added up. One evening, Sophia sat on her back porch, watching the sun disappear beyond the neighborhood. She found herself thinking about the past 4 years, not with anger, with clarity. She finally understood something. Jacob didn't fool her because she was naive. He fooled her because she believed marriage meant trust. There was no shame in that. Trust is supposed to exist inside a marriage. The problem was never trust. The problem was giving trust to someone who treated it like an opportunity. That lesson stayed with her. Months later, another family cookout brought everyone together, just like the gathering where Denise first questioned the financial imbalance. Children played in the yard. Music drifted across the neighborhood. Food covered folding tables. Relatives shared stories. The scene felt familiar, but Sophia felt different. She wasn't distracted by bills. She wasn't carrying hidden worries. She wasn't trying to solve problems created by someone else. She was simply present. For the first time in a long time, Denise eventually sat beside her, the same way she had years earlier. The two women watched family members laugh and talk across the yard. "You seem happy," Denise said. "I am. You earned it." Sophia smiled. Maybe she had, not because she won a legal battle, not because Jacob lost, because she finally chose herself, because she stopped carrying responsibilities that never belonged to her, because she learned that love should never require someone to ignore reality. As Sophia looked around the yard, she realized something important. Freedom wasn't about money. It wasn't about property. It wasn't about court documents. Freedom was waking up without confusion. Freedom was knowing the truth. Freedom was trusting herself again. And that feeling was worth more than anything hidden inside Jacob's safe. Before we finish today's story, I'd like to ask you something. Have you ever trusted someone longer than you should have because you wanted the relationship to work? Share your experience in the comments. Stories like these remind us that many people face struggles they never talk about openly. And if you enjoy honest family stories that feel like real life, don't forget to subscribe and share this video with someone who might need it. As the evening continued, Sophia watched her family laughing together beneath the fading sunlight. For years, she believed the biggest danger in her marriage was losing money. She eventually learned the real danger was losing herself. Fortunately, she found herself again before it was too late. Jacob believed money gave him power. He believed hidden accounts gave him protection. He believed secret plans gave him an advantage. In the end, none of those things saved him. The truth was simpler. Money comes and goes. Property comes and goes. Even relationships come and go. Character stays. Choices stay. Consequences stay. The safe that Jacob trusted with his secrets ultimately revealed the person he truly was. And the woman he underestimated became the one person prepared to face that truth. Sophia Grant entered her marriage believing trust was enough. She left it understanding something even more valuable. Trust should never replace awareness. And no matter how carefully someone hides the truth has a way of keeping records.